Hey everyone, tonight we're stepping aboard a medieval ship. Not the sleek vessels of the modern world, but a wooden world creaking against the pull of the waves. This isn't the safety of solid ground, nor the warmth of a village fire, but a place of rolling decks, salt-stung winds, and the endless horizon where the sea swallows the sky. Imagine the harbour at dawn, ropes straining, sails flapping, voices calling as the crew readies to cast off. The smell of tar, fish, and brine clings to everything. Once the shore fades, there is only the ship itself. A floating world of rough timber and rougher lives. Hammocks sway in the hold, water barrels creak with each tilt, and rats scurry in the dark corners below deck. Above, the wind snaps at canvas, and the captain's word is law. For sailors, the sea was both master and monster. Calm days brought endless monotony, hours marked only by the sun and the turn of the watch. Storms, when they came, were battles for survival. Waves crashing like walls, rain blinding, timbers groaning under the strain. To sail was to live with danger, with hunger, with superstition, and with the constant reminder that land was always weeks, sometimes months away. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these quiet voyages into the past. And let me know in the comments where you are listening from tonight, whether you are far inland or close to the sea. Now, dim the lights, close your eyes, and let's step aboard to feel the sway of the deck, hear the hiss of waves against the hull, and drift into the wooden world of medieval sailing. Part 1. Leaving the shore, but the wooden world. Let us begin our journey not on land, but in the heart of a bustling medieval port. The air is thick with a chaotic symphony of smells, the sharp, clean scent of salt from the sea, the rich aroma of pine tar and oakum used to seal the ships, the stench of fish being gutted on the docks, and the damp, earthy smell of wet ropes and canvas. The sounds are a cacophony of creaking timbers, of gulls crying overhead, of merchants shouting in a dozen different languages, and of the rhythmic chanting of sailors hoisting heavy cargo into the belly of a waiting ship. This ship is to be our world. Let us step aboard. It is not the sleek, majestic vessel of a later age. It is a cog, a common workhorse of the northern seas, or perhaps a Mediterranean galley, long and slender. Whichever it is a creature made entirely of wood. The floors, the walls, the ceiling, everything is timber. It feels less like a machine for sailing and more like a hollowed-out living thing. Our first impression is of how small, dark, and incredibly crowded it is. The ship is a marvel of spatial efficiency, but it is not built for human comfort. Every inch of space is dedicated to its primary purpose, carrying cargo or soldiers. The space for the crew and passengers is an afterthought, crammed into whatever nooks and crannies remain. We stand on the main deck. It is a single, open space, cluttered with ropes, barrels, and equipment. The deck planks are rough-hewn, wide, and stained with years of salt spray and spilled cargo. They are not smooth or level, but follow the natural curved contour of the ship's hull. The wood is perpetually damp and often slippery with a fine layer of green algae. At the center of the ship rises the great, thick mast, a single, massive tree trunk, stripped and shaped. It seems to anchor the entire vessel to the sky. From it hangs the single, enormous square sail, currently bundled and tied. The sail is not made of fine white canvas, but of a heavy, coarse, and often patched material, stiff with salt and rain. A complex web of ropes, the rigging, runs from the mast and the sail to the sides of the ship. To a landsman, it is an incomprehensible tangle. To a sailor, it is the language of his trade, each rope with its own name and its own vital purpose. There is no wheel for steering. At the back of the ship, the stern, there is a massive wooden tiller, a long, heavy bar of wood connected to the rudder. It takes the full strength of 1 or 2 men to wrestle the tiller back and forth, to keep the ship on its course against the pressure of the wind and the waves. Let us now venture below deck. We descend a steep, narrow ladder into a space of profound, almost absolute darkness. The air is thick, stagnant, and heavy with a potent mixture of smells. The damp rot of the bilges, the sour stench of unwashed bodies, the smell of the cargo, perhaps wine or wool or salted fish, and the ever-present cloying smell of seasickness. There are no cabins, no private spaces. The crew sleeps where they can, in the dark, cramped space between the cargo holds. They do not have bunks, but simply find a space on the uneven floor or on top of a coil of rope, and wrap themselves in a rough woolen blanket. They share this space with the rats that infest every ship, their scurrying and squeaking a constant nocturnal soundtrack. They also share it with the ship's bilge, the foul, stagnant water that collects in the very bottom of the hull, a stinking soup of sea water, leaked cargo, and human waste. This wooden world is a place of constant, rhythmic noise. It is never truly silent. Even at anchor in a calm harbour, there is the gentle creak and groan of the timbers as the ship shifts with the tide. There is the soft slap of water against the hull. There is the sigh of the wind in the rigging. These are the foundational sounds of life at sea, a constant living symphony of wood, water, and wind. This ship is more than just a vessel. It is a self-contained, floating community, an isolated piece of the medieval world. It has its own strict social hierarchy from the captain down to the lowest cabin boy. It has its own language, a rich jargon of nautical terms that would be incomprehensible to an outsider. It has its own laws, its own customs, its own deeply ingrained superstitions. To be on this ship is to be cut off from the rest of humanity. Once the shore disappears over the horizon, this small, creaking wooden world is the entirety of your existence. Your life depends entirely on the strength of its timbers, the skill of its captain, and the grace of God. It is a world of immense hardship, of profound discomfort, and of constant underlying danger. But it is also a world of a strange and powerful beauty, of a deep, intimate connection to the primal forces of the sea and the sky. Let your mind settle into the gentle, rocking motion of this wooden world. Hear the soft, rhythmic creak of the timbers, a sound like a slow, deep breath. Feel the solid, curved planks beneath your feet. It is a small, safe, and self-contained space, a floating cradle on the great dark water. Let the gentle, constant motion and the quiet living sounds of the ship lull you into a state of deep and peaceful rest. Casting off. The last of the cargo has been loaded. The passengers, a nervous-looking group of merchants and pilgrims, have found their small spaces on the crowded deck. The captain, a weathered man with eyes accustomed to scanning distant horizons, gives the order. It is time to leave the shore. The process of casting off is a complex and noisy ritual of coordinated labor. It begins with the weighing of the anchor. The anchor is not a neat metal object, but a heavy, cumbersome cross of timber weighted with a large stone. It is attached to the ship by a thick, heavy rope made of hemp, which has been soaking in the harbour water and is swollen and incredibly heavy. There is no mechanical winch. The anchor must be raised by the brute force of the crew. They gather around the windlass, a great horizontal wooden barrel in the bow of the ship. They fit long, wooden bars into the holes of the windlass and begin to walk in a slow, circular, trudging rhythm. As they push, they sing. This is the sea shanty, a vital tool of the medieval sailor. The song is not for entertainment. It is a work song, a rhythmic chant that coordinates the men's movements, turning their individual efforts into a single, collective pulse of power. The lead singer, the shantyman, sings a line, and the crew roars back the chorus, heaving on the bars in perfect time with the music. The song is simple, repetitive, and often crude, but its rhythm is what makes the impossible work of raising the anchor possible. With a great groaning sound from the windlass and a final sucking sound from the muddy harbour bottom, the anchor breaks free. It is slowly, painstakingly hauled up to the bow, dripping with mud and seaweed, and secured. The ship is now untethered, free from the land. Now the sail must be raised. This is another great effort of coordinated labour. A team of sailors hauls on the halyard, the rope that raises the yard arm, the great wooden spar to which the top of the square sail is attached. Again, they use a shanty to time their pulls, their bodies straining in unison as the immensely heavy, damp sail and the yard arm are slowly hoisted up the mast. As the sail rises, it catches the wind, first with a gentle flap, then with a deep, resonant whoomp as it fills with the breeze. The ship, which has been drifting idly, gives a sudden lurch, a shiver that runs through its entire wooden frame. It is coming alive. The creaking of the timbers deepens, the ropes tighten and begin to sing in the wind. The ship begins to move, slowly at first, and then with gathering speed, out of the crowded harbour and toward the open sea. For the sailors, this is a moment of release, the beginning of a new adventure or another routine voyage. But for the landsmen on board, the passengers, this is a moment of profound transition, a mixture of excitement and deep, primal fear. As the ship leaves the shelter of the harbour, it meets the open sea for the first time. It begins to roll. This is not the gentle rocking it had at anchor, but a deep, long, unsettling rhythm, a constant lifting and falling as it rides the swells of the ocean. This is the moment when seasickness, the mal de mer, begins its miserable work. For the inexperienced traveller, the next few days will be a wretched ordeal of nausea and vomiting, a physical and mental misery that makes them question the wisdom of ever leaving the solid, unmoving land. The shore, which was just a moment ago a world of familiar sounds and smells, begins to recede. The details of the town, the church tower, the houses, the people on the dock waving farewell, grow smaller and smaller until they blur into a simple, abstract line between the sea and the sky. And then that line too begins to fade, sinking below the horizon. This is the moment of true separation. The ship is now alone, a tiny, fragile, man-made speck in a vast, indifferent wilderness of water and sky. The laws, the comforts, the very certainties of the land no longer apply. A new reality has taken hold, a reality governed by the wind, the waves, and the strange, unwritten laws of the sea. Let your mind float on this moment of departure. Feel the first deep, rolling motion of the open ocean. Hear the powerful snap of the sail as it fills with wind, and the new, purposeful creaking of the ship's timbers. See the land, your solid, familiar world, sinking below the horizon, leaving you in a new and boundless world of blue. The captain's word. Aboard the small, crowded, and often chaotic wooden world of a medieval ship, there is one single, absolute point of authority. This is the captain, the master of the vessel. His word is not just a guideline, it is law. In the isolated and dangerous environment of the sea, a breakdown of discipline can be fatal, and the captain, S-Power, is the essential glue that holds the ship, S-Fragile society, together. Let us stand on the raised quarterdeck at the stern of the ship, the vessel's command centre. Here the captain stands, his legs braced against the rolling of the deck, his eyes constantly scanning the sea, the sky, and the set of the great square sail. He is a man who has been shaped by the sea. His face is a roadmap of wrinkles carved by 1,000 squints against the sun and the salt spray. His hands are thick and calloused from a lifetime of handling ropes. He may not be able to read or write, but he can read the language of the weather in the shape of the clouds, and the language of the sea in the color and the movement of the waves. His authority is absolute. He is the judge, the jury, and the executioner for all disputes that arise on his vessel. If two sailors get into a knife fight over a gambling debt, it is the captain who will hear their case and pronounce the sentence. The punishments are swift and harsh, designed to maintain order in a world of rough, often violent men. A minor offence might be punished with a flogging, the sailor tied to the mast and whipped with a knotted rope. A more serious crime like theft of supplies could be punished by keel hauling. The victim is tied to a rope and dragged under the ship from one side to the other, a brutal ordeal that often resulted in drowning or serious injury from the barnacles on the hull. Mutiny, the ultimate crime at sea, is punished by immediate death, the offender hanged from the yardarm as a grim warning to the rest of the crew. The captain's primary responsibility is navigation. This is not the precise scientific navigation of a later age. It is an art, a craft, a mixture of experience, intuition, and a few simple tools. The most important tool is the magnetic compass, a recent and still somewhat mysterious invention that has made its way from China. It is a magnetized needle floating on a piece of wood in a bowl of water which reliably points north. It is a fragile, precious instrument kept in a special box, the binnacle, and guarded closely. For determining latitude, the captain might use a simple astrolabe or a cross staff to measure the angle of the sun at noon or of the North Star at night. But these instruments are difficult to use on a pitching deck, and their results are often inaccurate. There is no way to determine longitude, the ship's east-west position. For that, the captain relies on dead reckoning. He knows his ship's speed, judged by eye by watching a piece of wood float past the hull, and he knows its direction from the compass. From this he makes an educated guess as to how far he has travelled. It is a deeply imprecise science, and it is why ships so often became lost. The captain must also be a master of the weather. He must know the signs of an approaching storm, a change in the wind, a certain kind of cloud, the behaviour of the seabirds. His decision to ride out a storm at sea or to run for the shelter of a distant harbour is a life or death calculation. He is the leader of the small floating tribe that is his crew. He knows their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears. He knows which man is the best at climbing the rigging in a gale and which has the steadiest hand on the tiller. He must be both feared and respected. He must be able to drive his men to the limits of their endurance, but he must also know when to reward them with an extra ration of wine after a hard day's work. His life is one of immense responsibility and profound loneliness. He may share his meals with his officers, but he is set apart by the weight of his command. Every soul on the ship, every piece of valuable cargo is his responsibility. If the ship is lost, the failure is his alone. But if he brings his ship, his crew, and his cargo safely back to port, the rewards and the reputation are his as well. Let your mind rest on the quiet, commanding figure of the captain. See him standing, unmoving, his gaze fixed on the endless horizon, his hand resting on the tiller, feeling the life of the ship through the vibration of the wood. He is the calm, certain center of this uncertain, moving world. Let his steady, confident presence bring a sense of safety and order to your own mind. The ship is in good hands. The course is set. All is well. The endless day. For the common sailor aboard a medieval ship, life is a relentless, repetitive cycle of hard physical labor, punctuated by brief periods of rest. There is no weekend, no day off. The sea is a demanding master, and the work of keeping the ship sailing safely is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job. This is the story of the endless, ordinary day at sea. The day begins in the darkness before dawn with a shout from the watch officer. The crew is divided into 2 watches, the port watch and the starboard watch. While one watch is on duty, the other is allowed a few precious hours of sleep. Now it is time for the change of the watch. The men who have been sleeping are roused from their fitful rest on the hard deck. They are cold, stiff, and still tired. There is no morning routine of washing or changing clothes. They sleep in the same coarse, salt-stiffened woolen tunics and trousers they work in. They stumble to their feet, their minds still clouded with sleep, and take their places at their stations. The men of the previous watch, their faces pale with exhaustion, are relieved and immediately collapse into whatever space they can find to get their own few hours of sleep. The first task of the morning is to wash down the decks. The sailors use wooden buckets on ropes to haul seawater up over the side and slosh it across the planks, scrubbing away the dirt and grime of the previous day with stiff, broom-like besoms. It is cold, wet, miserable work, but it is essential for keeping the ship clean and reducing the risk of disease. Then the real work of sailing begins. The ship is a complex living machine and it requires constant attention. The single great square sail is an inefficient and difficult tool to manage. It is good for sailing with the wind behind the ship, but it is almost useless for sailing against the wind. This means that the ship's course is often a long, zigzagging tack, and this requires the sail to be constantly adjusted. The captain shouts an order, and the men leap into action. A team of sailors hauls on the braces, the ropes that control the angle of the yard arm, swinging the great sail to catch the wind in a new direction. The work is heavy, a constant pulling and straining on thick, wet, abrasive hemp ropes that can tear the skin from a man's hands. The most dangerous and skillful job is that of the topman. When a change in the wind requires the sail to be reefed, partially furled to reduce its size, or fully furled, these men must climb the mast. There are no safety harnesses, no nets. They must climb the rigging, a swaying spider's web of ropes, 100 feet or more above the pitching deck. They move with the acrobatic grace of a monkey, their bare feet and calloused hands finding holds that seem impossibly small. They clamber out along the yard arm, a single swaying spar of wood, and, hanging on with one hand, they use the other to wrestle with the great, heavy flogging sail, gathering its stiff folds and tying them down with smaller ropes. A single misstep, a moment's loss of grip, means a certain fall to the deck or into the sea, a fall that is almost always fatal. The day is a constant cycle of this work, trimming the sails, adjusting the rigging, keeping watch from the crow's nest at the top of the mast for other ships or for the first faint smudge of land on the horizon. There is also the endless work of maintenance. A frayed rope must be spliced, a small tear in the sail must be patched, a leaking seam in the hull must be recaulked with tar and oakum. And then there is the most dreaded job of all, working the pump. The wooden hull of the ship is never completely watertight. Seawater constantly, slowly seeps in, collecting in the foul, stinking bilge at the bottom of the ship. This water must be pumped out every single day to prevent the ship from becoming waterlogged and unstable. The pump is a simple, back-breaking hand pump, and working it for hours on end in the foul, dark, airless hold is a physically punishing and deeply unpleasant task. The men work in a state of constant, low-level discomfort. They are always either wet or damp. Their clothes are stiff with salt. Their skin is covered in a layer of grime, a mixture of tar, sweat, and dirt. that can never be fully washed away. They are a rough, tough, and self-reliant breed of men, their bodies hardened and their spirits shaped by the unforgiving demands of the sea. Let your mind settle into the slow, powerful, and repetitive rhythm of the sailor's day. Hear the rhythmic creak of the windlass, the snap of the sail, the steady, sloshing sound of the bilge pump. It is a world of hard, honest, and essential labor. There is no room for distraction, no time for idleness. There is only the work and the ship and the endless, empty sea. The lost navigator, the sky which has been a clear, reassuring blue for days, is now a uniform and menacing sheet of grey. The sun, the sailor's primary guide, has vanished. The wind, once a steady and predictable friend, is now a fickle, shifting enemy, blowing first from one direction, then another. The ship is lost. Let us stand beside the captain on the quarterdeck in this moment of profound and quiet crisis. He is staring at the small, precious magnetic compass, but its needle is swinging erratically, thrown off by the iron in the surrounding rocks of an unseen coastline, or perhaps by the electrical charge of an approaching storm. His other navigational tools are useless without the sun or the stars. The ship is sailing blind, adrift in a grey, featureless wilderness of water and fog. This is the greatest fear of the medieval mariner. To be lost at sea is to be at the mercy of forces far beyond one's control. The ship, which felt like a secure and self-contained world, is suddenly revealed for what it truly is, a tiny, fragile, and utterly insignificant speck of wood in an immense and hostile ocean. The captain's face, usually a mask of confident authority, is now etched with a deep, private anxiety. He must not show his fear to the crew. He must maintain the appearance of control. He continues to give orders, to trim the sails, to keep the ship on what he hopes is the correct heading. But it is a guess, a desperate gamble based on instinct and a few unreliable clues. He might taste the salt spray on his lips, trying to judge his proximity to a major ocean current. He might study the flight of a lone seabird, hoping it is heading towards land. He might lower a lead line, a weighted rope marked at intervals, to try and measure the depth of the water, a clue that might tell him if he is nearing a coast. These are the ancient, subtle arts of the sailor, but in this vast emptiness they feel like little more than guesswork. The crew is aware of the danger. They do not need to be told that they are lost. They can feel it in the uncertain movements of the ship. They can see it in the worried, sideways glances of the officers. A tense, fearful quiet settles over the vessel. The usual rough banter and the work shanties die away. The men go about their duties in a grim, subdued silence. Their fears are not just of the unknown, they are of the very real and very specific dangers of a lost ship. The greatest of these is the lee shore. This is a coastline that is downwind of the ship. If the wind is blowing strongly towards the land, their inefficient square sail may not give them enough power to sail away from it. They will be pushed, slowly and inexorably, towards the rocks or the sandbars, to be smashed to pieces by the surf. Every sailor's nightmare is to hear the sound of breakers in the fog, the terrible, roaring sound of a coastline where there should be none. Another great fear is of running out of supplies. The ship carries only enough fresh water and food for the expected duration of the voyage. Every day spent lost at sea is a day closer to starvation and thirst. The captain orders the rations to be cut. The daily allowance of water is reduced to a single precious cup. The hardtack is portioned out in ever smaller pieces. The spectre of a slow, miserable death from thirst and hunger begins to haunt the minds of the crew. In this moment of profound crisis, the crew turns to their faith. The ship's priest will lead the entire crew in a solemn public prayer on the main deck. The men, their faces gaunt with fear and exhaustion, kneel on the damp planks and pray to God, to the Virgin Mary, the Stella Maris, the Star of the Sea, and to St. Nicholas, the patron saint of sailors. They pray for a sign, for a break in the clouds, for a glimpse of the sun or the North Star, for a favourable wind to guide them home. They are adrift, not just on the ocean, a small, lost community, held together only by their shared fear and their shared, desperate hope. Let your mind drift with this lost vessel on the grey, featureless sea. Feel the profound sense of disorientation, of being untethered from all familiar landmarks. There is no up or down, no east or west, only the endless rolling expanse of the water and the sky. It is a state of profound quiet and deeply unsettling limbo. Part 2. The storm. The black sky. The grey, featureless sky has been darkening all day. The sea, which was a rolling but predictable swell, has become agitated, confused, its surface chopped into a mess of steep, angry-looking waves. The wind no longer sighs in the rigging. It moans, a low, ominous sound like a great beast waking from its slumber. The captain, who has been watching the sky with a growing sense of dread, knows what is coming. A storm, a tempest, the great and terrible enemy of all who sail in wooden ships. The ship must be prepared for battle. The captain's voice, which is usually a calm command, is now a sharp, urgent bark, cutting through the rising howl of the wind. The crew, their faces grim, leap into a frantic but well-drilled routine of survival. The first and most important task is to reduce the sail. The great single square sail is a powerful engine in a moderate breeze, but in a gale it is a terrible liability. If left fully open, the force of the wind would rip it to shreds, or worse, snap the great mast itself, leaving the ship crippled and helpless. The topmen, the bravest and most agile of the crew, begin the terrifying ascent into the rigging. The ship is now pitching and rolling violently, and the mast is whipping back and forth like a giant metronome. The men climb, their bodies flattened against the ropes, the wind tearing at their clothes, trying to rip them from their holds. They clamber out onto the yardarm and begin the desperate, brutal fight to furl the sail, their bare hands numb with cold, wrestling with the stiff, flogging canvas that has the power of a wild, angry animal. On deck, the rest of the crew works to secure everything that is loose. Barrels are lashed down with extra ropes. The livestock that is carried on deck, chickens in their coops, a pig in its pen, are secured as best they can be. The heavy wooden covers of the cargo hatches are put in place and battened down, sealed with tarpaulins to prevent the waves that will soon be washing over the deck from flooding the hold. The ship is being stripped down, made as sleek and as resilient as possible, ready to face the onslaught. As the last of the light fades, the storm hits in its full fury. It is a moment of shocking, overwhelming violence. The wind rises to a deafening, continuous shriek. The sea, which was already rough, is now transformed into a chaos of monstrous, mountainous waves. These are not the rolling swells of the open ocean. They are huge, steep, pyramid-like walls of black water, their tops collapsing into a terrifying chaos of white, foaming spray. The ship, which seemed so large and solid in the harbour, is now a tiny, insignificant toy tossed about at the mercy of these immense forces. It is lifted up on the crest of a giant wave, hanging for a terrifying moment in the sky, the wind screaming through its rigging. And then it plunges down into the trough, a deep, dark valley between the waves, the walls of water towering over it on either side, seeming as if they are about to curl over and swallow the ship whole. The waves begin to break over the deck. Not just spray, but solid tons of green, churning water, crashing down onto the planks with the force of a battering ram. The men on deck must cling to the ropes and the railings to avoid being washed overboard into the maelstrom. To fall into the sea in such a storm is a sentence of certain, immediate death. The ship itself seems to be groaning in agony. Every timber is under an immense, almost unbearable strain. The creaking and groaning that is the normal living sound of the ship is now a series of terrifying shrieking cracks and reports, as if the very bones of the vessel are about to break apart. Below deck, in the pitch-black, suffocating hold, the situation is a living hell. The passengers and the off-watch crew are thrown about with every violent roll of the ship. The noise is a deafening, terrifying roar, the shriek of the wind, the crash of the waves against the hull, the groaning of the timbers. The bilge water, a foul, stinking soup, sloshes back and forth, soaking everything and everyone. It is a world of darkness, of terror, and of profound, helpless seasickness. This is the ultimate test of the ship and its crew. Their survival depends on the strength of the shipwright's craft, on the skill of the captain at the tiller, keeping the ship's bow pointed into the waves, and on the simple, grim endurance of the men. All they can do is hold on and pray and wait for the storm to pass. Let your mind be rocked by the violent, chaotic motion of the ship in the storm. Hear the deafening roar of the wind and the waves. Feel the cold, shocking impact of the water crashing over the deck. It is a world of pure, primal, natural fury. The leaking hull. The storm has been raging for 2 days and 2 nights. The men are at the absolute limit of their endurance, their bodies bruised and battered, their minds numb with exhaustion and fear. The ship has, so far, survived the onslaught. The mast is still standing. The rudder is still intact. But now, a new and more insidious enemy has appeared. A cry goes up from the man who has been sent into the hold to check the bilges. It is a cry of pure terror. The ship is taking on water. A seam has opened up somewhere in the hull. The constant, violent wrenching and twisting of the ship in the massive waves has finally broken the integrity of the wooden structure. The oakum, the tarred rope fibers that are packed between the planks to keep them watertight, has been worked loose. And now the sea is beginning to find its way in. This is the most feared of all disasters at sea. A ship can survive a broken mast, it can survive a tattered sail, but it cannot survive a major, uncontrolled leak. The sea, which has been the external enemy, is now on the inside a quiet, relentless invader. The captain and the ship's carpenter descend into the dark, sloshing hold with a lantern. The sight that greets them is a terrifying one. The bilge water, which is normally a few inches of stagnant filth, is now several feet deep and rising. The water is a cold, black, churning mess, filled with floating debris from the cargo. And they can hear it, a steady, gushing sound, the sound of the ocean pouring into their small, wooden world. The leak must be found. The carpenter, a man of immense practical skill, wades into the foul, icy water, feeling his way along the inside of the hull, his hands searching for the telltale rush of incoming water. The ship is rolling violently, and he must brace himself against the timbers to keep his footing. While he searches, the rest of the crew is put to work in a desperate, frantic battle for survival. The hand pumps are manned, but they are designed to handle the normal, slow seepage of the hull. They are no match for this new flood. The only hope is to bail. The men form a human chain, a bucket brigade, from the hold up to the main deck. They stand on the swaying ladders in the near-total darkness, their bodies already weak with exhaustion. A man in the hold fills a leather bucket with the freezing, filthy water and passes it up to the man above him, who passes it to the next, and so on, until the last man in the chain dumps the water over the side back into the raging sea from which it came. The work is brutal, repetitive, and soul-destroying. Their movements are a slow, desperate, and seemingly futile rhythm. For every bucket of water they throw out, another seems to pour in through the hull. Their arms ache, their backs scream in protest, their hands are raw from the rough buckets. The carpenter, meanwhile, has found the leak. It is a long, gaping seam between two planks, low down near the keel. Now comes the impossible task of trying to repair it from the inside while the sea is still pouring through. He and his assistants will try to stuff the seam with anything they can find: spare pieces of oakum, strips of cloth, even pieces of their own clothing. They will try to hammer a piece of lead sheeting or a new piece of wood over the seam. It is a desperate, makeshift repair, a temporary patch in the hope that it will slow the leak enough for the bailing to keep up. This is the moment when the ship's community is tested to its absolute limit. It is a battle of human endurance against the relentless power of the ocean. The men bail, their faces set in a grim mask of determination. They are no longer thinking about their fear, about the storm raging outside. Their world has shrunk to the simple, desperate task of lifting the next bucket, of passing it to the next man, of keeping the rhythm going. Their survival depends on their ability to work together, to not give up, to keep fighting until the storm breaks or until their strength gives out and the sea finally claims them. Let your mind feel the cold, numbing shock of the bilge water. Hear the steady, terrifying sound of the leak. Feel the back-breaking, repetitive motion of the bailing. This is a world stripped down to a single desperate struggle, man against the sea. Marooned, the storm has passed. A pale, watery sun is breaking through the tattered clouds. The sea is still a rough, chaotic swell, but the monstrous ship-killing waves are gone. The ship has, miraculously, survived. The makeshift patch in the hull has held, and the exhausted crew has finally gained on the leak. But they are not safe. The ship is a crippled wreck. The great mast has been shattered by the wind, leaving only a jagged stump. The single, precious sail has been torn to ribbons, its remnants flogging uselessly in the wind. The rudder has been smashed, and the ship can no longer be steered. It is a helpless, floating hulk adrift at the mercy of the currents, and they are lost. The storm has driven them for hundreds of miles off their intended course. The captain has no idea where they are. They have been cast into an unknown, uncharted part of the ocean. Days turn into weeks. The ship drifts aimlessly. The rations, which were already low, are now almost gone. The last of the hardtack is riddled with weevils. The last of the salted meat is green with mold. The fresh water is the most critical problem. The water in the barrels has turned foul, and the men are reduced to trying to catch the occasional rainfall on a piece of canvas, hoarding the few precious, life-giving drops. The men become ghosts of their former selves. Their bodies are skeletal. Their skin hangs loose on their bones. Their lips are cracked and black from dehydration. Their minds, starved of food and tormented by thirst, begin to play tricks on them. They see imaginary islands on the horizon. They hear imaginary voices on the wind. The strict discipline of the ship collapses. The captain is no longer a figure of authority. He is just another starving, desperate man. The bonds of the crew dissolve into a grim, individual struggle for survival. A man who has managed to hide a piece of biscuit is a king, but he must guard it with his life. And then, one morning, a cry from the lookout. But this is not the cry of a man seeing a mirage. It is a real cry, a raw, croaking sound of pure, disbelieving joy. Land! On the horizon is a faint, dark line, a smudge of green against the blue of the sea. It is an island. With their last desperate reserves of strength, the men fashion a crude makeshift sail from their blankets and a spare spar of wood. They use oars to try and steer the crippled ship towards the promise of salvation. As they get closer, they see that it is a small, uninhabited island, a place of rocks, strange trees, and a strip of white, sandy beach. With a final grinding lurch, the ship runs aground on a reef just offshore, its back broken, its long and weary journey finally over. The survivors, using a makeshift raft, make their way to the shore. They stumble onto the beach, their legs unsteady after weeks at sea, and collapse onto the warm, solid, unmoving sand. They have been saved from the sea, but they are now marooned, castaways, in a world they do not know, with no map, no tools, and no way of knowing if they will ever be rescued. They are in a strange, and in some ways, a beautiful new world. They find a stream of fresh, cool water, and they drink until their bellies are full. The simple pleasure of it, an almost religious experience, and they find strange, sweet fruits on the trees. They find shellfish on the rocks. For the first time in weeks, they are not hungry, they are not thirsty, but they are utterly, profoundly alone. They are a small, lost tribe, a tiny, forgotten piece of medieval Europe, washed up on the shore of an unknown world. Their old lives, their homes, their families, they are all a distant, dreamlike memory. Their new life is a simple, primal one, to find food, to find shelter, and to watch the empty horizon, day after day, for the impossible, miraculous sight of a sail. Let your mind rest on the profound, exhausted peace of the castaway. The terrible struggle with the sea is over. The solid, warm sand is beneath you. The life-giving water is at hand. The future is a terrifying blank. But in this one single moment, there is the pure, simple, and overwhelming relief of survival. The pirate's shadow. The life of a medieval sailor is a life of constant, grinding hardship. The pay is low, the work is dangerous, and the discipline is brutal. For some, the temptation to escape this life, to seize a measure of freedom and wealth for themselves, becomes irresistible. They choose to desert the world of legitimate trade and to embrace the lawless, violent, and often short life of a pirate. The pirate's shadow is a constant threat on the medieval sea lanes. These are not the romantic, swashbuckling figures of a later age. They are brutal, desperate men, the outcasts and the outlaws of the sea. They are sailors who have mutinied and seized their own ship, or fishermen from a poor coastal village who have turned to raiding as a way to supplement their meagre income. Let us be on a merchant cog, heavy and slow-laden with a valuable cargo of English wool, making its way through the English Channel. The day is calm, the sailing easy, and then a cry from the lookout. A ship is approaching, fast. At first, there is no alarm. It is likely another merchant. But as the ship gets closer, a sense of dread begins to grow. It is a smaller, leaner, and faster vessel, a ship built for speed and aggression. And as it draws nearer, the merchants see the terrifying signs. There are too many men on its deck, and they are not sailors at their work. They are armed men holding axes and grappling hooks. And it is not flying the flag of any known king or port. It is flying a simple, stark, black banner. Panic erupts on the merchant cog. The captain knows that his slow, cumbersome ship cannot outrun the pirate vessel, and his small crew of a dozen or so sailors, armed only with their knives and a few rusty spears, are no match for the 50 or 60 hardened fighters on the pirate ship. He has a terrible choice to make: fight a hopeless battle and be slaughtered, or surrender and pray for mercy. The pirates are masters of intimidation. Their ship pulls alongside the cog with terrifying speed and skill. They throw grappling hooks, their iron claws biting deep into the wooden rail of the merchant ship, lashing the two vessels together, and then, with wild, terrifying war cries, they swarm over the side. The fight, if there is one, is short and brutal. The pirates are not interested in taking prisoners unless they are a wealthy merchant or a noble who can be held for a high ransom. The common sailors are seen as disposable. They are cut down where they stand, their bodies thrown into the sea. Once the ship is taken, the pirates work with a ruthless efficiency. They are not interested in the bulky cargo of wool. They are after the portable wealth, the chest of silver coins in the Captain S cabin that will be used to pay for the cargo, the fine clothes of the wealthy passengers, any jewelry or personal valuables they can find. The captured ship itself might be the greatest prize. If it is a better, faster vessel than their own, they will simply take it, transferring their own crew and supplies and abandoning their old ship. The captured merchants and crew who have been kept alive are given a stark choice: join the pirate crew and swear an oath to their new, lawless brotherhood, or be marooned on the nearest deserted coastline. The pirate brotherhood is a strange, paradoxical society. It is a world of extreme violence and brutality, but it is also one of the few places in the medieval world with a form of rough, democratic equality. A pirate captain is often elected by his crew, and he can be deposed if he is seen as a poor leader. The spoils of a raid are divided according to a strict, pre-agreed formula, with each man getting his fair share. For the common sailor who has spent his life taking orders from arrogant nobles and greedy merchants, the pirate ship can be a taste of a freedom and an equality that is unimaginable in the legitimate world. But it is a freedom that is almost always short-lived. The life of a pirate is a life of constant danger. They are not just at risk from the storms and the sea, but from the naval patrols of kings and powerful cities who hunt them down without mercy. When a pirate is captured, there is no trial. The sentence is always the same: a quick death by hanging from the yard arm of a naval vessel, their bodies left to rot in the sun as a warning to others. Let your mind drift on the quiet, tense moments before the pirate attack. The sight of the strange sail on the horizon, the growing sense of dread, the terrible, helpless feeling of being hunted, the shore's embrace. The voyage has been long and hard. Months have passed since the ship left its home port. The crew is exhausted, their bodies worn down by the endless labor, their minds numbed by the monotony of the sea and the sky. The ship itself is battered and weary, its timbers groaning, its sail patched and repatched. And then, one morning, comes the moment they have been dreaming of. The cry from the lookout, "Land ho!" It begins as a faint, low smudge on the horizon, a darker line between the blue of the sea and the pale blue of the sky. At first it is uncertain, a trick of the light, a phantom of their longing, but slowly, as the ship sails closer, the smudge grows, it takes on shape, and it becomes undeniably real. It is the coast of their homeland. A profound, almost electric change sweeps through the ship. The lethargy and the weariness of the past months seem to vanish. The men who have been going about their duties with a grim, silent endurance are suddenly filled with a new energy. There are shouts of joy. Men who have been at odds for weeks clap each other on the back. The shantyman breaks into a cheerful, rollicking song, and the crew joins in the chorus with a full-throated roar. As they draw closer to the shore, the familiar, beloved details of their home begin to emerge. They can see the green of the fields, the dark green of the forests. They can make out the shape of the church tower in their home port, a landmark they have all held in their mind's eye through the long, lonely nights at sea. They can begin to smell the land. It is a rich, complex and intoxicating aroma, a smell they have almost forgotten. It is the smell of damp earth, of pine trees, of wood smoke from a cottage chimney, of livestock in a field. It is the smell of home, and it is the most beautiful perfume in the world. The ship enters the familiar protected waters of the harbour. The great sail is furled for the last time. The anchor, which has not been used for so long, is released, and it plunges into the water with a great, satisfying splash, its chain rattling out. The ship swings on its mooring and comes to a gentle rest. The voyage is over. The docks are crowded with people. The news of the ship's arrival has spread through the town, and the families of the crew have rushed down to the harbour. The reunion is a moment of pure, overwhelming emotion. Wives, who have been living for months with the gnawing fear that their husbands have been lost to the sea, weep with a relief that is so profound it is painful. Children, who barely remember their fathers, stare shyly at these gaunt, bearded strangers before being swept up in a fierce, loving embrace. The sailors, for their part, are almost dizzy with the experience of being back on land. The solid, unmoving ground feels strange beneath their feet after months of the deck's constant motion. The sheer number of people, the noise, the colours of the town, it is a sensory overload after the stark simplicity of the sea. That night, the taverns of the port town are filled with the returned sailors. They have been paid their wages, a few precious silver coins that they have worked so hard and risked so much to earn. The ale flows freely. The sailors tell the stories of their voyage, the tales of storms and strange lands growing more and in the telling. They are heroes for a night. Part 3. The world of the waves, but the language of the sea. Life aboard a medieval ship is a life lived in a world with its own distinct and powerful language. For the sailor, the ship and the sea are not just a collection of objects and forces. They are a living text, a complex system of signs and symbols that must be constantly read and interpreted. To survive at sea is to be fluent in this silent, powerful language. Let us stand on the deck of the ship on a calm, clear day. To a landsman, the scene is one of beautiful, monotonous simplicity, a blue sky, a blue sea. To the experienced sailor, it is a page full of information. He begins by reading the sky. The colour of the sky at dawn and at sunset is a vital clue to the coming weather. A red sky at night is a sailor's delight, a promise of a fair day to come. A red sky in the morning is a sailor's warning, a sign of an approaching storm. The shapes and the movements of the clouds are a complex vocabulary. High, wispy cirrus clouds, known as mare's tails, can be the first subtle heralds of a distant weather front. A mackerel sky, with its pattern of small, rippling clouds, warns that a change in the weather is imminent. He then reads the sea itself. The colour of the water can tell him about its depth and what lies beneath. A deep, dark blue signifies deep, safe water. A lighter, greener colour suggests that the water is shallower, that the bottom is sandy. A brownish, muddy colour warns of shallows, of river estuaries, of dangerous, shifting sandbanks. The movement of the waves is another crucial sign. The sailor learns to distinguish between the wind-driven waves of the surface and the long, powerful, underlying swell of the deep ocean. A change in the direction of the swell can be a sign of a distant storm, its energy travelling for hundreds of miles across the water. The way the waves break, the amount of foam and spray, the very sound they make as they strike the hull, all these are subtle clues about the strength and the direction of the wind and the currents. He also reads the language of the living creatures of the sea. A school of dolphins or porpoises playing around the bow of the ship is considered a sign of good luck and fair weather. The appearance of certain kinds of seabirds, like petrels, known as Mother Carey's chickens, can be a warning of an approaching storm. In the coastal waters, the type of seabird, gulls, gannets, cormorants, can give a clue as to how far the ship is from land. And then there is the ship itself. The sailor is in a constant, intimate, sensory conversation with his vessel. He can feel the life of the ship through the soles of his bare feet on the deck. He can feel the subtle shift in its vibration that tells him the wind is changing. He can hear the language of the rigging, the different notes that the ropes sing in the wind, a high-pitched hum in a steady breeze, a low, mournful moan before a gale. He knows the meaning of every creak and groan of the ship's timbers, and he can distinguish the normal, healthy sounds of a labouring ship from the sharp, cracking sound that signals a dangerous structural failure. This language is not learned from books. It is absorbed over years of experience into the very bones of the sailor. It is a deep, intuitive and holistic understanding of the complex, interconnected system of the ship, the sea, and the sky. It is a form of literacy that is as complex and as vital as the literacy of the scholar in his library. Let your mind float on this sea of subtle signs and signals. See the world not as a collection of things, but as a living, breathing language. The clouds are words, the waves are sentences. The cry of a gull is a piece of vital information. It is a world of deep, quiet, and constant observation. The starry compass. Night has fallen on the open ocean. The world has been reduced to a profound, inky blackness, a darkness so complete that the line between the sea and the sky seems to dissolve. There are no landmarks, no familiar shores, only the small, fragile wooden world of the ship, a tiny, insignificant speck in a vast, dark universe. But above, in the profound blackness of the sky, is the sailor's map, his clock, and his compass. This is the world of the stars. For the medieval mariner sailing in the northern seas, one star is more important than all the others combined. This is Polaris, the North Star. He finds it by first locating the familiar shape of the plough or the Big Dipper and following the two pointer stars at the end of its bowl, which lead him in a straight line to a single bright and miraculously unmoving point of light. This is his anchor in the cosmos. While all the other stars wheel and turn across the night sky, Polaris remains fixed, a constant, reliable beacon marking the direction of true north. For a ship without a magnetic compass, or with one that is behaving erratically, the North Star is the single most important tool of navigation. The helmsman will keep his eyes fixed on it, or on a point on the horizon directly beneath it, to keep the ship on its course through the long, dark hours of the night. The stars are also his clock. The slow, majestic rotation of the constellations around the North Star is a great celestial timepiece. An experienced sailor can tell the time and how much of the night has passed simply by noting the position of the plough or of Cassiopeia. The night is not an undifferentiated stretch of darkness. It is a series of predictable repeating patterns, a clock face of immense and silent grandeur. The stars are also his calendar. As the seasons change, different constellations become visible in the night sky. The rising of a particular constellation, like Orion in the winter, or the summer triangle, tells the sailor what time of year it is, a vital piece of information in a long and disorienting voyage. In the Mediterranean, where Polaris is lower in the sky and can be obscured by haze, the sailors use a different set of celestial guides. They navigate by the sun and the moon, and by the familiar patterns of the Greco-Roman constellations, the figures of myth and legend, Orion the Hunter, Perseus, Andromeda, that have been used to guide sailors on these waters for thousands of years. But the stars are more than just a practical tool for navigation. They are a source of deep, spiritual awe and wonder. In the profound silence of the open ocean, far from the obscuring lights and smoke of the land, the night sky is a spectacle of breathtaking beauty. The Milky Way is not a faint, hazy band. It is a brilliant, shimmering river of light, a torrent of countless individual stars. The familiar constellations are brighter, sharper, more intensely present than they can ever be when seen from the land. The sailors look up at this immense, silent, and perfectly ordered celestial display, and they see the handiwork of God. The perfect, predictable, and unchanging movement of the stars is a profound contrast to the chaotic, unpredictable, and dangerous world of the sea below. The sky is a symbol of the divine, of the eternal, of a perfect, heavenly order. To look at the stars is a form of prayer, a moment of connection to a reality that is greater, more permanent, and more peaceful than their own small, fragile, and transient lives. Let your mind float under this vast, brilliant, and silent canopy of stars. See the steady, unwavering light of the North Star, a single, reassuring point of certainty in the immense darkness. Feel the slow, majestic, wheeling motion of the constellations. It is a sight of profound, quiet, and deeply calming beauty. The laws of the sea. Life at sea is a life lived outside the normal boundaries of the law. Once a ship is on the open ocean, it is beyond the reach of the king's sheriffs, the lord's courts, and the familiar customs of the land. And yet, it is not a world of complete lawlessness. Over the centuries, a separate and distinct legal code has evolved, a set of rules and customs designed specifically for the unique, dangerous, and isolated world of the ship. These are the laws of the sea. These laws are not written down in great formal legal texts. They are a collection of traditions, of precedents, of practical, common-sense rules that have been passed down from one generation of sailors to the next. One of the most important and widely recognized of these codes is the Laws of Oléron, which originated among the wine traders of the Atlantic coast of France. Let us imagine a dispute that has arisen on a merchant ship. A piece of the cargo, a valuable barrel of wine, has been damaged in a storm. The merchant who owns the cargo is demanding compensation from the ship's captain. The captain argues that the damage was an act of God and that he is not responsible. How is this dispute to be settled? According to the laws of Oléron, a simple and practical procedure is followed. The captain and the merchant will bring their case before a jury of their peers. This is not a formal court, but an impromptu gathering of the most experienced sailors and merchants on board. They will gather on the main deck and, under the open sky, they will hear the evidence. The law is intensely practical. For example, it states that if the cargo was damaged, because the captain chose to sail in weather that was obviously too dangerous, then he is liable. But if the storm was unavoidable and if the crew did everything in their power to protect the cargo, then the loss is to be shared. The principle of general average is applied, where all the merchants with cargo on board and the shipowner himself will share the cost of the loss, a form of mutual insurance. The laws also deal with the discipline and the rights of the crew. They specify the amount and the quality of the food and wine that a sailor is entitled to. They dictate what should happen if a sailor falls sick. According to the laws of Oléron, a sick sailor must be put ashore at the next port and cared for at the ship's expense until he is well enough to travel home. They also prescribe the punishments for various offences. A sailor who is injured in a drunken brawl on shore leave is not entitled to be cared for by the ship. A sailor who leaves his post on watch, endangering the whole ship, can be severely punished. Perhaps the most dramatic of these laws concerns the jettison. In a terrible storm, if the ship is in danger of sinking because it is overloaded, the captain may have to make the terrible decision to jettison some of the cargo, to throw it overboard, to lighten the ship. The laws of Oléron specify that he must first consult with the merchants on board. If they agree, the cargo is thrown over and the loss is shared among everyone. But if a merchant refuses to have his cargo jettisoned, the captain can have him tied to it and thrown overboard with his goods. It is a brutal law, but it reflects the grim reality that the survival of the ship and the majority of the people on board must take precedence over the property rights of a single individual. These laws of the sea are a reflection of the unique, self-contained, and deeply interdependent society of the ship. They are not based on grand legal theories, but on the hard-won wisdom of generations of sailors. They are about fairness, about shared responsibility, and about the absolute overriding necessity of maintaining order and ensuring survival in a world where a single mistake can lead to disaster. Let your mind rest on the quiet, serious deliberation of the sailor's court. The weathered faces, the calm, practical discussion. It is a world of simple, direct, and effective justice. The sea's superstitions. The medieval sailor is a man of deep, if sometimes unconventional faith. He prays to God and the saints for protection. But his spiritual world is also populated by a host of older, darker, and more mysterious beliefs. The sea is an ancient, powerful, and often terrifying place, and the sailor's mind is filled with a rich and complex web of superstitions, taboos, and folk beliefs, a parallel faith that exists alongside the teachings of the church. Let us be on the deck of a ship that is becalmed. The sail hangs limp and useless from the mast. The sea is a flat, glassy sheet of silver under a hot white sun. The ship is motionless, a painted ship upon a painted ocean. For the sailors, this is a deeply unsettling and unnatural state. A ship is meant to move. To be becalmed is to be trapped, helpless, at the mercy of the sea's whims. In this anxious idleness, the sailors' minds turn to the unseen forces that govern their world. Why has the wind died? Have they done something to anger it? The wind is not just a meteorological phenomenon. It is a powerful, sentient entity, a spirit that must be respected and appeased. There are 1,000 small taboos that must be observed to avoid offending the sea and the wind. To whistle on board a ship is strictly forbidden. To whistle is to whistle up a storm, to mock the wind, an act of foolish arrogance that will surely be punished. To kill an albatross or a seabird is also considered terrible bad luck, for these birds are believed to carry the souls of drowned sailors. The ship itself is a place of powerful superstitions. Certain things are considered deeply unlucky to bring on board. Bananas are one, perhaps because they were often carried on ships that were lost in the fast-moving tropics. The presence of a woman on board is also often considered to be a source of bad luck, a distraction to the crew, and an offence to the jealous sea. The launching of a new ship is a critical moment, and a bottle of wine will be smashed on its bow, a sacrifice to appease the sea gods and to ensure the ship's good fortune. The creatures of the deep are a source of both wonder and terror. A sailor might see a whale, a monstrous, barely imaginable beast, breaching the surface of the water. Is it just an animal, or is it the great Leviathan from the Bible, a creature of cosmic power and mystery? Sailors tell stories of the Kraken, a colossal, squid-like creature that can drag a whole ship down to the depths. They tell stories of mermaids, beautiful, seductive, and deadly creatures who lure sailors to their doom. These stories, told in the dark, cramped quarters of the forecastle, are more than just entertainment. They are a way of giving shape and form to the deep, primal fears of the ocean's depths. And then there is the fear of ghosts. The sea is a vast, unmarked graveyard. Every ship is haunted by the memory of the men who have been lost to its waters. A sailor who dies at sea is often buried by being sewn into his own hammock and slid overboard. It is believed that a stitch must be taken through the dead sailor's nose to ensure that his ghost will not be able to return and haunt the ship. The appearance of a phantom ship, the Flying Dutchman, a ghostly vessel crewed by the damned, is the most terrible of all omens, a sign of certain and imminent disaster. These superstitions are the sailor's way of trying to impose a sense of order and control on a world that is fundamentally chaotic, unpredictable, and dangerous. They are a set of rules for a game in which the stakes are life and death. The priest may offer comfort for the soul in the next world, but the observance of these ancient sea superstitions is what a sailor believes will keep him alive in this one. Let your mind drift on this sea of ancient beliefs and fears. Hear the quiet, fearful whispers of the sailors as they tell their stories of krakens and ghost ships. Feel the deep, unsettling stillness of the becalmed ship. The galley's rhythm. Let us travel now from the cold, wind-swept waters of the north to the bright, sun-drenched expanse of the Mediterranean. Here, a different kind of ship dominates the sea lanes. This is the galley, a long, slender, and deadly vessel, a direct descendant of the warships of ancient Greece and Rome. And the life of the man who serves on a galley is a world away from the life of the sailor on a northern cog. His world is not defined by the wind, but by the relentless, brutal, and hypnotic rhythm of the oar. The galley is a ship built for speed and aggression. It is a warship, a pirate hunter, or the vessel of a wealthy merchant who values speed above all else. It has a sail, a lateen sail, a triangular sail that is much more efficient than the northern square sail. But the true engine of the galley is not the wind, it is the raw, brute power of human muscle. Let us go below the main deck to the rowing benches. The space is a long, low, suffocating tunnel. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, of bilge water, and of human misery. On either side of a central gangway are the rowing benches, packed so tightly together that there is barely room to move. On these benches sit the galley slaves, the galeotti. These are the wretched of the earth. They are convicted criminals, sentenced to the galleys as a punishment that is considered a living death. They are prisoners of war, captured in the endless naval battles between the Christian and Muslim powers of the Mediterranean. They are slaves, bought in the markets of the Barbary Coast or the Black Sea. They are chained to the benches where they sit. An iron manacle is fixed around one of their ankles, its chain bolted to the bench. They live, eat, sleep, and die in this one spot. Their world is the few feet of wooden bench and the heavy 20-foot-long oar that is their constant companion. They are naked to the waist, their bodies lean and corded with the specific, overdeveloped muscles of a rower. Their backs are a crisscross of old scars from the whip of the boatswain. Their skin is pale and sickly, for they rarely see the sun. At the end of the central gangway stands the boatswain, the master of the rowers. In his hand he holds a whip. His job is to extract the maximum amount of power from the human engines under his command. He sets the rhythm of the stroke with a drum or a loud guttural chant, and he uses his whip without mercy on any man who falters, who breaks the rhythm, whose oar stroke weakens. The rhythm is everything. It is a slow, steady beat for normal cruising speed. But when the galley is chasing a prize or fleeing an enemy, the beat quickens. The boatswain's chant becomes a frantic, desperate roar. The whip falls faster. The men are driven to the absolute limit of their physical endurance, their hearts pounding, their lungs screaming for air, their muscles on fire. The galley seems to leap forward in the water, a sleek, deadly predator powered by human agony. The life of a galley slave is a vision of hell on earth. They are given just enough food, stale biscuit, and water to keep them alive and working. They sleep when they are allowed to sleep, slumped over their oars. They are ravaged by disease, by vermin, and by the sheer, soul-crushing despair of their situation. The average life expectancy of a galley slave is short. They are a disposable, expendable source of power. When a man dies at his oar, His chain is unlocked, his body is thrown into the sea, and a new slave is chained in his place. And yet, even in this abyss of human suffering, a strange and powerful community is formed. The men on the bench are chained together, not just by iron, but by a shared, desperate fate. They learn to communicate without words through the rhythm of their bodies. They learn to support each other, to share a stolen crust of bread, to offer a quiet word of comfort in the darkness. They are a brotherhood of the damned, and their only hope is the dream of a shipwreck, of a battle, of any chaotic event that might offer a single, fleeting chance of escape. Let your mind rest on the powerful, hypnotic, and terrible rhythm of the galley. Hear the steady, relentless beat of the drum, the creak of the oars in the oarlocks, the swish of the blades in the water, the low, collective groan of the straining men. It is the sound of a human machine, a symphony of organized and brutal labor. Part 4. The Edge of the World. Monsters and Marvels. The medieval sea is not just a physical space, it is a landscape of the imagination, a place where the known world ends and the realm of monsters and marvels begins. The maps of the period are a testament to this, the familiar coastlines of Europe giving way to vast, empty oceans decorated with the chilling warning, "Here be dragons." For the sailor who ventured out into the unknown, the sea was a place of profound and often terrifying wonder. Let us sit on the deck of a ship, on a long and lonely watch in the middle of the night. The only sounds are the creak of the ship and the whisper of the waves. It is in these quiet, contemplative moments that the sailor's mind turns to the stories and legends that populate the great, dark mystery of the deep. These stories are a vital part of the oral culture of the sea, passed down from veteran sailors to young cabin boys in the cramped, dark forecastle. They are a mixture of garbled accounts of real creatures, of ancient myths, and of pure, unadulterated fantasy. They tell of the sea serpent, a colossal, snake-like creature that can rise from the depths and crush a ship in its coils. This legend may have been born from sightings of giant oarfish or of a line of dolphins leaping in unison, their true nature distorted by fear and the shimmering heat haze. They tell of the bishopfish and the sea monk, strange humanoid creatures of the deep that are a bizarre parody of the church hierarchy on land. These stories, accompanied by crude drawings, were taken as serious accounts of the strange and godly, or ungodly, life that teemed in the depths, and they tell, with a special kind of dread, of the great whirlpools that can suck a ship down to the bottom of the sea. The maelstrom off the coast of Norway was a real and dangerous tidal current, but in the imagination of the sailors it became a supernatural vortex, the very maw of hell, a place from which no ship could ever return. But the edge of the world is not just a place of monsters. It is also a place of marvels, of wonders that defy the imagination. Sailors who travelled to the south along the coast of Africa or into the Indian Ocean brought back stories that enchanted and baffled their listeners at home. They spoke of flying fish, a creature that seemed to be a miraculous fusion of a bird and a fish. They spoke of the strange, exotic birds of the tropics with their impossibly bright plumage. They spoke of seas that glowed in the dark with a strange, milky, phosphorescent light, a phenomenon we now know is caused by bioluminescent algae, but which to them was a sign of a magical, enchanted sea. They brought back physical objects that seemed to prove their fantastic stories. A narwhal tusk, a long single spiraled tooth, was brought back and presented as the horn of a unicorn, a creature of myth and legend, proof that the magical world was real. The strange dried body of a ray might be cleverly altered and presented as a Jenny Hanover, a grotesque, demon-like creature from the depths. These stories and objects were more than just entertainment. They were a way for the medieval mind to grapple with a world that was suddenly revealing itself to be much larger and much stranger than it had ever imagined. The maps began to change. The blank spaces once filled with dragons began to be filled with these new, real, and equally wondrous discoveries. The sailor was the conduit for this new knowledge. He was the man who had been to the edge of the world and had come back to tell the tale. His stories stretched the boundaries of the imagination and slowly, painstakingly, began to replace the old myths with a new, and in its own way, an even more marvelous reality. Let your mind drift on this sea of imagination. See the great coiled sea serpent rising from the waves in the moonlight. See the strange, glowing waters of a southern sea. It is a world where the line between the real and the fantastic is blurred, where anything is possible. The Lone Watch. It is the middle of the night, the deepest, darkest hour, known as the graveyard watch. The ship is quiet. Most of the crew is asleep below deck. But high above, at the very top of the great mast, a single man is awake. He is the lookout, the eyes of the sleeping ship, and his lonely vigil is one of the most important and one of the most contemplative jobs on board. He sits in a small basket-like enclosure called the crow's nest. From this high perch 100 feet above the deck, he has a god's eye view of the world. The ship below him is a small, dark shape, its deck faintly illuminated by a single lantern. The sea around him is a vast, empty, circular plain of blackness, stretching out to a horizon that is invisible in the dark. The lookout's job is a simple but vital one: to watch. He must strain his eyes, which have become accustomed to the deep darkness, for any sign of danger. He is looking for the faint, distant flicker of a light that could be another ship, one that they might collide with in the night. He is looking for the dark, low shape of an uncharted rock or an unlit coastline. He is listening for the sound of breakers on the shore, a sound that means certain doom. The safety of every soul on board rests on his vigilance, but his watch is also a time of profound and unparalleled solitude. He is physically separated from the rest of the crew, alone with his thoughts in his small perch between the sea and the stars. The world is reduced to its most elemental forms. There is the gentle, constant rocking of the ship beneath him, a motion he can feel through the swaying of the mast. There is the immense, silent canopy of the stars above him, brighter and more numerous than he has ever seen them from the land. There is the vast, dark, and mysterious presence of the sea all around him. In this deep solitude, the mind can wander. He might think of his home, of the family he has left behind, their faces appearing to him in the constellations. He might think of the strange lands he has seen, the wonders and the horrors of his long voyage. He might reflect on the state of his soul, the vast, silent spectacle of the cosmos, turning his thoughts to God and to his own small, transient place in the great, divine scheme of things. The crow's nest is a place of a strange, almost mystical beauty. The lookout can see the faint, ghostly glow of phosphorescence in the ship's wake, a trail of cold green fire in the black water. He can see a meteor, a falling star, streak across the sky, a silent, breathtaking slash of light. He might hear the strange, sighing sound of a whale surfacing nearby, its breath a great misty plume in the cold night air. But it is also a place of great discomfort and danger. The wind is colder and stronger up here. In rough weather, the swaying of the mast becomes a wild, violent arc, and he must cling on for dear life. To fall asleep on watch is the most serious of all crimes for a sailor, for it endangers the entire ship. The officer of the watch on the deck below will call up to him at regular intervals, just to hear his answering cry, to be sure that he is still awake and alert. The lone watch is a microcosm of the sailor's life. It is a life of immense solitude, of deep connection to the natural world, of constant vigilance, and of a profound, almost spiritual contemplation that is born from the long silent hours of simply watching and waiting. Let your mind climb to the high, lonely perch of the crow's nest. Feel the cool night wind. See the immense, star-dusted bowl of the sky. Feel the gentle, rhythmic swaying of the mast. It is a place of profound, deep, and almost perfect peace, a quiet, still point in a turning world. The empty chart. In the great age of European exploration that is to come, the ship's cabin will be dominated by a large table on which is spread a detailed and accurate sea chart, a scientific map of the world. But in our medieval ship, the captain's cabin contains no such thing. The medieval chart is a strange, beautiful, and profoundly different kind of map, a map that is as much a work of art and a statement of faith as it is a tool for navigation. Let us imagine the captain in his small, cramped cabin, examining his most precious chart by the flickering light of a single candle. It is not a piece of paper, but a large, supple piece of vellum, the prepared skin of a sheep. The coastlines are not drawn with the precise mathematical accuracy of a modern map. They are fluid, artistic, and often wildly inaccurate, drawn from a mixture of sailors' reports, ancient, half-forgotten Roman sources, and pure guesswork. This is a port-to-land chart, a map designed for practical, port-to-port navigation in the familiar waters of the Mediterranean or the European coasts. Its most striking feature is the complex web of fine, straight lines that crisscross the sea. These are the rhumb lines, radiating out from a series of compass roses. They are not lines of latitude and longitude. They are a visual representation of the 32 directions of the mariner's compass. To sail from one port to another, the pilot will find the line on the chart that connects them, and this will tell him the compass bearing he needs to follow. The ports and harbours are marked with their names, written in a beautiful, careful script. The important ports are often marked in red ink, and a small stylized drawing of the town, with its church towers and its city walls, might be included. The chart is a practical tool, but it is also a beautiful, handcrafted object. But the most fascinating part of the chart is what happens when it leaves the known world. As the coastlines stretch away from the familiar waters of Europe, they become more and more fantastic. The interior of Africa is a blank space, perhaps filled with a drawing of an elephant or a strange, monstrous figure from the legends of Prester John. The great empty expanse of the Atlantic Ocean is the true edge of the world. Here the map-maker's imagination runs free. He might draw a great sea serpent or the island of St. Brendan, the mythical paradise said to lie somewhere in the Western Ocean. And then there is the grandest of all medieval maps, the Mappa Mundi. This is not a practical sea chart, but a theological diagram of the world. The world is depicted as a flat disk, centered on the holy city of Jerusalem. At the very top, in the east, which is why we still call maps oriented, is the Garden of Eden, a paradise from which 4 great rivers flow. The known continents of Asia, Africa, and Europe are squeezed into this divinely ordered scheme, their shapes distorted to fit the theological reality. The whole world is surrounded by a great, encircling ocean. This is not a map for finding your way from one place to another. It is a map for finding your place in God's creation. The empty chart of the medieval sailor is a powerful symbol of his world. It is a world where the known is a small, brightly lit island, surrounded by a vast, mysterious, and often terrifying ocean of the unknown. To sail off the edge of the known chart is an act of immense courage, a journey into a world of monsters, of marvels, and of the great blank spaces where anything is possible. It is a journey into the imagination itself. Let your mind trace the strange, beautiful, and inaccurate lines of the medieval chart. See the familiar ports, the web of rum lines, and the great empty spaces filled with sea serpents and lost paradises. It is a world seen through a lens of faith, of fear, and of a deep, abiding sense of wonder. The makeshift repair. The sea is a relentless and unforgiving environment. It is constantly testing, probing, and trying to destroy the small wooden world of the ship. Wood rots, ropes fray, sails tear, and iron rusts. For the sailor, life is a constant, unending battle against this process of decay, a battle fought with a few simple tools and a great deal of ingenuity. This is the art of the makeshift repair. Let us imagine a crisis. The ship is in the middle of a long voyage, hundreds of miles from the nearest port. During a squall, a powerful gust of wind has put too much strain on the great square sail, and with a sound like a thunderclap, the sail has torn a great, gaping rip down its centre. The ship is now severely crippled. Without its main engine, it is slow, difficult to steer, and vulnerable. The captain cannot simply sail to the nearest sailmaker's shop. The crew must repair the damage themselves here and now, in the middle of the ocean. The sail is lowered to the deck, a vast, heavy and unwieldy expanse of wet, stiff canvas. The ship's sailmaker, a man with his own specialized set of skills, takes charge. He is not a craftsman in a quiet workshop. He is an emergency surgeon, performing a critical operation on the pitching deck of the ship. His tools are simple: a large curved needle called a palm, which is pushed with a leather guard worn on the hand, a block of beeswax for waterproofing the thread, and a supply of heavy, waxed linen thread and spare patches of canvas. The sailmaker and his assistants lay the two edges of the great tier together. The work is difficult, the canvas is thick and stiff, and pushing the needle through it requires great strength. They begin to stitch the tier, their movements slow, deliberate, and practiced. They use a strong herringbone stitch, a technique that has been passed down for generations. The needle goes in, the thread is pulled tight, the stitch is locked. It is a slow, repetitive, and deeply meditative process. As they work, the rest of the crew looks on with a quiet, anxious hope. Their lives depend on the strength of these stitches. A failed repair could mean the sail will rip again in the next strong wind, leaving them stranded. This scene of repair is repeated all over the ship every single day. A rope begins to fray. A sailor will take his marlinspike, a pointed iron tool, and his knife, and he will work the frayed ends back into the rope, creating a splice that is as strong, or even stronger, than the original rope. It is a small, beautiful act of weaving, a little piece of order created in the midst of the constant, chaotic forces of decay. A wooden plank in the deck begins to rot. The ship S-carpenter will carefully cut out the rotten section and fit a new piece of wood, a Dutchman, into its place, sealing it with tar and oakum. His work must be precise, for a leaky deck can let water into the cargo hold, ruining the goods and endangering the ship. The ship itself is a great living patchwork of these countless small repairs. It is not a pristine, factory-made object. It is a thing that is constantly being wounded by the sea and constantly being healed by the hands of its crew. Every sailor must be a jack of all trades, a master of the makeshift, able to fix what is broken with whatever is at hand. This culture of repair is a profound philosophy of survival. It is an acceptance that the world is a place of constant wear and tear, and that life is a process of patiently, skillfully, and endlessly mending what is broken. It is a world without disposable parts, a world where every object is precious and must be preserved for as long as possible. Let your mind rest on the quiet, focused and skillful work of the repair. See the sailmaker's needle rising and falling in its steady rhythm. Hear the quiet scrape of the carpenter's plane on a new piece of wood. It is a world of deep, practical and creative problem-solving. The unseen cargo. We have spoken of the sailors, the captain, the ship itself, but the very reason for the ship's existence, the heart of its purpose, is often unseen, silent, and hidden away in the deep, dark belly of the vessel. This is the cargo, the goods that are being transported at great risk and expense from one part of the world to another. And the nature of this cargo tells a story about the world it connects. Let us descend one last time into the hold of a medieval merchant ship. The air is thick, dark and cool, a stark contrast to the bright sun and wind on the deck above. The space is a cavern of shadows illuminated only by the faint light coming down from the open hatchway. And it is a cavern of smells, each smell a clue to the ship's journey and its destination. If this is a ship sailing from the port of Bordeaux, the hold is filled with hundreds, perhaps thousands, of large wooden barrels, or tons. They are stacked in careful, tight rows, wedged into place to prevent them from shifting in a rough sea. The air is thick with the rich, sweet, and slightly acidic smell of red wine. This is the great claret trade, the river of wine that flows from the vineyards of France to the thirsty taverns and noble cellars of England. The barrels are the lifeblood of a whole economy, and the safe arrival of this wine fleet is a matter of immense importance. If this is a ship sailing from a port in the Baltic, a member of the great Hanseatic League, the cargo is different. The hold might be filled with sacks of grain from the fertile plains of Poland, or with barrels of salted herring, a vital source of protein for a continent where the Church forbade the eating of meat on Fridays and during Lent. The smell is of brine, of fish, of the damp, earthy scent of grain. Or the cargo might be timber, great, rough-hewn logs of oak and pine for the masts and hulls of ships being built in the ports of England and Flanders. Or it might be beeswax from the great forests of Russia, a crucial commodity for the thousands of candles that will burn in the churches and monasteries of Europe. If we are on a Venetian or a Genoese galley, returning from the great ports of the Levant, Alexandria or Acre, the cargo is one of almost unimaginable luxury and exoticism. Here, in the dark hold, are the treasures of the East. There are great, tightly bound bales that exude a faint, sweet and spicy perfume. These are the spices, pepper, cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, that have travelled for thousands of miles along the Silk Road or the sea lanes of the Indian Ocean. They are worth more than their weight in gold, a source of immense profit for the merchants who have financed this voyage. The hold smells like a pomander, a rich, complex and intoxicating blend of aromas that speaks of a world of unimaginable wealth and sophistication. Alongside the spices, there might be bales of silk from China, a fabric of almost magical lightness and beauty. There might be chests of precious goods, fine ceramics, intricate metalwork, or even books, the works of the great Arab and Greek scholars, being brought back to a Europe that is just beginning to rediscover the lost knowledge of the ancient world. The cargo is always at risk. A leak in the hull can ruin a shipment of grain or wool. A great wave can shift the cargo, causing the heavy barrels to break free and smash against the inside of the hull, endangering the ship itself. And the cargo is a constant temptation to pirates, a floating treasure chest that is protected only by the skill and the courage of the ship's small crew. The unseen cargo is the silent beating heart of the ship. It is the reason for the journey, the source of the profit, the tangible link between the distant and different worlds. It is the physical manifestation of the great growing web of trade and connection that is slowly, painstakingly stitching the medieval world back together. Let your mind rest in the dark, quiet, and fragrant hold of the ship. Breathe in the rich, complex aromas of wine, of spice, of timber, of the sea itself. It is the smell of a world in motion, of a world that is beginning to open up, to exchange its goods, and with them, its ideas, its cultures, its very identity. Part 5. The Return to Dust. The Shipbreaker's Yard. All voyages must end, and for the wooden ships that are the heroes of our story, there is a final, inevitable destination that is not a welcoming port, but a place of slow, deliberate, and necessary destruction. This is the shipbreaker's yard, the graveyard where old ships are brought to die, and to be reborn as something new. Let us visit such a place. It is a muddy, tidal flat at the edge of a harbour, a place that smells of low tide, of rotting seaweed, and of old, tired wood. Here the hulks of several old ships lie canted over in the mud, like the skeletons of great, stranded whales. They are no longer proud, sea-going vessels. They are wrecks, their voyages over, their timbers scarred and bleached by decades of sun, wind, and salt. A ship arrives here at the end of its useful life. Its hull is hogged, its back broken by the strain of the waves, so that it sags at the bow and the stern. Its timbers are riddled with the tunnels of the teredo worm, the termite of the sea. It is too leaky, too slow, too rotten to be trusted with a valuable cargo or with the lives of a crew. It is no longer a viable economic asset, and so the shipbreakers get to work. They are men with heavy, powerful tools, great long-handled axes, heavy mallets, and long iron crowbars. They are the undertakers of the sea, and their work is a kind of reverse shipbuilding. They begin by stripping the ship of everything that can be reused. The great mast is carefully unstepped and lowered. If it is still sound, it may be used on a new, smaller ship. The rigging, the miles of hemp rope, is unrove and coiled. The best of it will be used again. The old, frayed rope will be picked apart, its fibres becoming oakum, the essential material for caulking the seams of other ships. The great blocky anchor is salvaged. The iron fittings, the nails, the bolts, the hinges are painstakingly extracted from the wood to be melted down and reforged by a blacksmith. Then comes the destruction of the hull itself. The shipbreakers, like a team of butchers, begin to dismantle the great wooden carcass. They climb over the hull, their axes rising and falling in a steady, rhythmic beat. They cut through the thick, curved frames, the ribs of the great beast. They use their crowbars to pry up the deck planks and the thick, heavy planks of the hull. The sound is one of splintering, of groaning, of a great solid thing being slowly, inexorably taken apart. Nothing is wasted. In a world where good, seasoned timber is a scarce and valuable resource, every piece of the old ship is a treasure. The long, straight planks of the hull will be used in the construction of houses and sheds in the port town. You can see them today in the walls of old coastal buildings. Their curved shape and the empty holes of the iron bolts a clear sign of their former life at sea. The curved frames, the ship's knees, which have been grown and shaped by nature into a strong, right-angled form, are highly prized by house builders for use as structural braces. The old, tar-soaked, worm-eaten wood, which is no good for building, is not thrown away. It is cut into smaller pieces and sold as firewood, its slow, smoky, tar-scented fire a familiar smell in the hearths of the port town. The shipbreaker's yard is a place of endings, but it is also a place of transformation. The ship, which was a single, unified and beautiful object, is unmade, its constituent parts scattered, to begin a new life on the land. Its death is a necessary part of the cycle, providing the raw materials for the homes and the tools of the community that it served. Let your mind rest on the slow, deliberate and powerful rhythm of the shipbreaker's axe. see the great curved timbers turned grey by the sea, being taken apart to reveal the rich, warm colour of the oak within. It is a scene of destruction, but it is not a scene of waste. It is a quiet, practical, and deeply resourceful process, a final, respectful act of recycling in a world that could not afford to throw anything away. The sailor's grave. The sailor's life is a life lived in constant proximity to death, but for the man who dies at sea there is no quiet village churchyard, no stone to mark his passing, no place for his family to come and mourn. The sea is his coffin, and his grave is a vast, unmarked and ever-shifting wilderness. Let us be on the deck of a ship where a man has died. He may have been killed in an instant, falling from the rigging or washed overboard in a storm. Or he may have died a slow death from sickness or a festering wound. The crew gathers on the main deck, their usual rough banter silenced, their faces sombre and still. The preparations for the burial are simple and swift. The man's body is wrapped in his own canvas hammock or an old piece of sailcloth, which will become his shroud. The sailmaker, his hands that are usually mending the ship's sails now performing a more solemn task, stitches the shroud closed with his heavy needle and waxed thread. It is an old sea custom that the final stitch is taken through the dead man's nose, a grim, practical measure to ensure that he is truly dead and, according to superstition, to prevent his ghost from returning. The body is weighted down. In a naval vessel, a cannonball might be placed at the man's feet. In a merchant ship, a few heavy stones from the ship's ballast. This is to ensure that the body will sink quickly and deeply into the mysterious depths of the ocean. The captain, or the ship's priest if there is one, stands before the assembled crew. He opens a prayer book, its pages fluttering in the sea breeze, and begins to read the order for the burial of the dead at sea. The words are ancient, beautiful, and filled with a deep, resonant power. "We therefore commit his body to the deep," the captain reads, his voice steady against the sound of the wind and the waves, "to be turned into corruption, looking for the resurrection of the body when the sea shall give up her dead." The words are a profound statement of faith in the face of the vast, annihilating power of the ocean. They are a promise that this act of committing a body to the deep is not an act of finality, that the sea is not a place of oblivion, but is merely a temporary resting place until the final day of judgment. At the end of the prayer, 4 of the dead man's closest comrades lift the shrouded body which has been resting on a plank. They carry it to the side of the ship. They tilt the plank, and the body slides, feet first, over the side and into the sea. It enters the water with a quiet splash, a small, brief disturbance in the endless, rolling surface of the ocean. It vanishes almost instantly into the deep, dark blue, leaving behind only a few fleeting bubbles. The crew stands in silence for a long moment, their eyes fixed on the spot where their shipmate disappeared. Each man is contemplating his own mortality, acutely aware that this could be his own fate, to die far from home, with no grave but the sea. And then it is over. The captain gives a quiet order. The men disperse and return to their duties. The ship sails on. The sea shows no sign of the man it has just taken. His memory exists now only in the minds of his shipmates, and in the prayers of the family at home who will wait for a man who will never return. Let your mind rest on the profound, simple, and deeply sorrowful dignity of this scene. The small group of men, their ship a tiny, lonely speck on the vast ocean, committing their comrade to the deep. It is a moment of immense, quiet, and powerful humanity, a testament to the need to find ritual, meaning, and hope, even in the face of the great, empty, and indifferent sea. The ghost ship. The sea is a place of stories, and the most powerful and enduring of these are the stories of ghosts. Every stretch of coastline, every dangerous reef, every fog-bound patch of ocean has its own tales of phantom ships, of the spectral crews of the drowned, and of the eerie supernatural warnings that the sea sometimes sends to the living. Let us be on the night watch, on a ship sailing through a thick, disorienting fog. The world has been reduced to a small, circular space of damp, grey emptiness. The only sounds are the creak of the ship and the mournful, lonely sound of the foghorn, a man blowing a haunting low note on a conch shell to warn other unseen ships of their presence. The sailors on watch are on edge. The fog is a natural but deeply unsettling phenomenon. It plays tricks on the eyes and the ears. A normal sound is muffled and distorted. A familiar shape becomes strange and menacing. It is a time when the boundary between the real and the imaginary becomes thin. And then one of the sailors sees it. He grabs his shipmate's arm, his eyes wide with a terror that is beyond the normal fears of the sea. Drifting silently out of the fog is another ship. But it is not a normal vessel. Its sails are tattered and grey like cobwebs. Its timbers are rotten and covered in a strange, phosphorescent slime. And on its deck are the silent, still figures of a crew. They are the forms of men, but they are unnaturally pale. Their eyes are hollow sockets, and their clothes are the rags of a bygone age. The ghost ship does not hail them. It makes no sound. It glides past them in the fog, a vision of absolute, silent, and profound dread, and then vanishes back into the mists from which it came. The sailors who have seen it are struck dumb with a terror that goes to the very core of their being. They have just seen the most famous and the most feared of all, the sea-s phantoms, the Flying Dutchman. The legend is known to every sailor. It is the story of a captain who, in his arrogance, swore a blasphemous oath that he would round a treacherous cape in a terrible storm, even if it took him until Judgment Day. For his pride, he and his ship were cursed to sail the seas for eternity, never able to make port, a spectral, terrifying omen of doom to all who see them. To see the Flying Dutchman is a sentence of death. It is a sign that your own ship will be lost, that you and your crew are destined to join the great, sad, ghostly fraternity of the drowned. The sailors who saw the vision will bring their story back to the rest of the crew. It will spread through the ship like a cold fire, a wave of panic and despair. The captain will try to dismiss it as a trick of the fog, a shared hallucination brought on by fear and exhaustion. But the seed of terror has been planted. Every strange creak of the timbers, every shadow on the deck, will now be interpreted as a sign of the curse. The ship's morale, its will to survive, has been dealt a mortal blow. These stories of ghost ships are a powerful expression of the sailor's deepest anxieties. They are a way of giving form to the nameless dread of the sea, the fear of being lost forever, of dying far from home, of one's memory being erased by the vast, indifferent ocean. The ghost ship is a floating memento mori, a constant spectral reminder of the thinness of the line between the living and the dead at sea. Let your mind drift in the thick, silent, and mysterious fog. See the ghostly, silent shape of the phantom ship as it glides by. It is a vision of profound, quiet, and deeply haunting beauty. The harbour, light. After a long and perilous voyage, after the storms, the pirates, the monsters, and the ghosts, comes the final blessed sign that the journey is almost over. For the sailor who has been at sea for months, who has navigated by the faint, distant light of the stars, there is no more beautiful, no more welcome sight in the world than the first faint, man-made light of the shore. This is the harbour light, the beacon, the lighthouse. Let us be on the deck of a ship at night, approaching a familiar coastline. The crew is on high alert. To make landfall at night is one of the most dangerous parts of a voyage. The coast is a place of hidden rocks, of treacherous currents, of sandbars that can shift with every tide. The captain and his pilot are on the quarterdeck, peering into the darkness, their faces etched with a deep, focused concentration. They are sailing on memory, on experience, on a deep, intuitive knowledge of the shape of the seabed and the sound of the waves, but they are waiting and hoping for a confirmation, for a single, certain point of light in the vast, confusing darkness. And then they see it. At first, it is just a tiny, intermittent flicker, so faint it could be a star, low on the horizon. But it is not a star, it does not twinkle. It is a steady, warm, and distinctly human light. It is the fire burning in the beacon at the mouth of their home harbour. A great collective sigh of relief runs through the ship. The pilot can now take a certain bearing. He knows exactly where he is, the greatest danger of the approach, the danger of being lost and of striking the coast in the wrong place is over. The lighthouses of the medieval world are not the tall, elegant stone towers with powerful automated lamps that we know. They are much simpler, more humble structures. It might be a stone turret on the wall of a coastal castle, or a special tower on a monastery that sits on a high headland. At the top of the tower is a simple, open brazier, a great iron basket, in which a fire is kept burning all night. The fuel is wood or coal, and it is the job of a dedicated keeper, often a monk or a hermit, to tend the fire to keep it burning brightly from sunset to sunrise. It is a lonely, repetitive, and incredibly important job. The lives of countless sailors depend on the keeper's diligence. As the ship gets closer, the single, faint flicker becomes a steady, welcoming glow. The sailors can see the flames themselves, leaping and dancing in the wind. The light illuminates the surrounding headland, the dark shapes of the rocks, the white foam of the waves crashing at their base. The light is not just a navigational aid, it is a symbol. It is a symbol of safety, of a refuge from the dangers of the sea. It is a symbol of home, of the warmth of the hearth, of the community that is waiting for them. It is a symbol of the land itself, of the solid, stable and predictable world that is so different from the chaotic, unpredictable world of the ocean. For the sailor who has lived for so long in a world of darkness and uncertainty, the harbour light is a profoundly emotional sight. It is a promise, a welcome, a sign that his long, hard ordeal is finally coming to an end. It is the most beautiful light he has ever seen. Let your mind focus on that single, small and steady point of light in the immense, dark landscape of the sea and the night. See its warm, golden glow reflecting on the dark water. Feel the profound sense of relief, of safety, of a journey's end that this simple light inspires. It is a beacon of hope, a guide out of the darkness. The landlocked sailor. Our journey is over. The sailor has returned to the shore. His wages have been spent, his stories have been told, but the sea does not easily release the men who have spent their lives in its service. For the old retired sailor, the land can be a strange and foreign country, and his heart will forever be drawn back to the world of the waves. Let us visit an old sailor in his final years. He lives in a small cottage in a port town within sight and sound of the sea. He is too old now, his body too broken by the years of hard labour, to go on another voyage. His hands are gnarled with arthritis, his back is permanently stooped, his eyes are clouded with cataracts, but his mind is still at sea. He spends his days sitting on a bench on the quayside, his face turned to the harbour. He watches the ships come and go, his expert eye judging the set of their sails, the skill of their captains. He can identify a ship from miles away just by the shape of its hull or the rake of its mast. The young, active sailors treat him with a mixture of respect and pity. He is a living archive of the sea, a man who has been to places they have only dreamed of. They will sometimes stop and ask him for his advice on a difficult passage or for a story of the old days. He will tell his tales, his voice growing stronger as he remembers the storms, the battles, the strange and beautiful sights of his youth. But he is a man out of his element. The solid, unchanging world of the land feels strange to him. He is restless, irritable. The quiet, predictable rhythms of life on shore are a poor substitute for the constant, dynamic challenge of the sea. His cottage is a small museum of his life's voyages. On the mantelpiece is a strange piece of coral from a southern sea, a brightly coloured shell, a carved wooden idol from a foreign land. The very timbers of his cottage might be salvaged from an old ship, the curved beams a constant subconscious reminder of the wooden world that was his true home. He speaks the language of the sea, a rich jargon of nautical terms that his landlocked family barely understands. He still thinks in terms of watches, of tides, of the direction of the wind. And when a great storm blows in from the sea, a storm that sends the townspeople running for the safety of their homes, the old sailor is in his element. He will stand on the cliff top, the wind tearing at his clothes, the salt spray on his face, and he will watch the sea in its full, majestic fury. He is not afraid. He is watching an old and respected adversary, a force that has shaped his entire life, and in his heart there is a strange, wild and powerful sense of coming home. He is the landlocked sailor, a man whose body is on the shore, but whose soul is still out there, on the endless, rolling and ever-changing ocean. His life has been one of immense hardship, but it has also been one of a freedom and an adventure that the landsman can never know. Let your mind rest on the quiet, still figure of the old sailor, sitting on the quayside, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He is a man at the very end of his long and weary voyage. He has found his final, safe harbour. The storms are over, the struggles are done. There is only the quiet, rhythmic sound of the waves on the shore, a final, gentle lullaby. Allow that deep, peaceful, and final sense of rest to settle over you now. The journey is over, all is calm, all is well.